So what the heck is going on right now with Brock Lesnar, with the UFC and WWE?
Yeah. Well, the deal is WWE wants Brock Lesnar for WrestleMania, which is what the deal with The Undertaker was, at the show in Anaheim, October 23rd. And Dana White, he's under contract to the UFC, and Dana White doesn't want him to do WrestleMania. And he can make, he can't make as much as he would make for a UFC fight, but it's not that much less.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier training camp. and Brock is, Brock will turn 34 this year. And he's a businessman, and he's looking at he's got a lot of notoriety right now. He's got a book coming out, endorsement deals, and he's looking at trying to make as much money as he can in this next year. And WrestleMania is a 7-figure payoff, so that will help out a lot. So he hasn't really committed. He hasn't committed to anything. As far as I know, as of a couple days ago, I know he had not committed to anything. There's no date for him to fight next. I'm sure he will. As I said, the deal is he wants to make money this year, and he can make more money fighting than anything else. But I think in his mind, I think that he would love if he could, fight once or twice this year and do WrestleMania, because that would be a huge year. And to get Dana White to agree to that is going to be very, very difficult, because Dana White doesn't want to blur the lines, and I can understand very much. You don't want one of your biggest stars, your biggest drawing star, to be on a competitor's pay-per-view, and because those guys, they often run the same weekends.
So he wants to wrestle, and you said there's a huge payday out there. Is he? Well, first of all, straighten us out on his contract status. Does he only have one fight left? So is there a potential that he's kind of using this as a bargaining chip to make UFC move?
I don't know that that's correct. I mean, no one's told me he only has one fight left, and I've never heard anything about a bargaining chip or anything of that caliber, or that he's like the thing like that people were saying, and I never said that he was that he wasn't going to fight again or anything like that. I mean, the thing is when I said, I think the word was exit strategy. It's the sense that Brock, as I said, is going to turn 34, and he's not one of these guys who wants to be fighting when he's 40. He wants to be retired and enjoying life. So the point is that he's preparing for his future. I'm not saying that this would be his last year in UFC, but I don't think he wants to do 5 more years of UFC either. So the point is that the deal is, the exit strategy is to make as much money as possible this year, and that's where WrestleMania would fit in. Not that he would not want to fight, but the other point is that for him to be, and make the kind of money that he made this past year in UFC, it's incumbent on him to get that championship back, and he will not get this championship back unless he improves his weaknesses, because this Brock Lesnar, with the skill set that he has, cannot beat a healthy Cain Velasquez. I mean, that's we saw that in the first fight. It was not, and that was not a fluke fight. Sometimes there's fights, like Sarah and St. Pierre, where Sarah destroyed St. Pierre in the first one, but we all knew that St. Pierre was the better fighter, and that was proven in the rematch. In this case, if they were to fight 10 times, I'm guessing Velasquez would take 9 of them. Or is able to improve on certain aspects of his game, and the fact that he has not brought in experts in Muay Thai to shore up that weakness as quick as possible, I don't consider that a good sign for him in as far as a comeback, because he's older than Cain, and again, learning new things. He's not gonna be able to, in an 8-week camp, shore up the weaknesses that he has. So he's gonna need some specialized training this next year if he can get back to the championship level. To get back to the championship level.
So let's go back to what everyone latched onto, though, and you did not say this, right? That you're talking about his financial future and an exit plan in general over the next 5 or 6 years, because people really took what you said as Lesnar's ready to bail on MMA and get the hell out of the sport now. You did not say that.
Yeah, I didn't. No, but he is in his mind, preparing for getting out. But it's not like it would be, imminently. And I certainly didn't say he was going to get out of it to do pro wrestling, because the last thing I would expect. I mean, you never say never. It's always a possibility if he needs the money. But pretty much, I would think one of the last things he would ever do is go back to pro wrestling. He would do the one. He'll do the one shot WrestleMania for the big payoff, but going back on the road for the 150, 200-day a year schedule, he hates traveling. You know, and he really doesn't like, you know, beating up his body. I mean, even if there was, you know, remember, he left pro wrestling in 2004, or he left WWE in 2004. He wrestled limited dates after that, but he left WWE in 2004 on top with no thought of MMA at the time. You know, he was, you know, at first it was to try to play football. But I mean, the point is he wanted out of pro wrestling because he couldn't handle that. He hated that traveling lifestyle and beating up his body. And I remember him telling me once that, you know, he sat there one day in the locker room, you know, and he was you know, he would have been 26 years old at the time. And he looked around the locker room and he saw all these guys who were 35 to 40 all beat up on, you know, taking all these pain pills just to get through day after day. And he just goes, my God, if I don't get out of this, this is my future. And he said that was the moment that he was mentally knew that he was out of pro wrestling, even though he went a little longer. But, you know, I mean, that was the moment he made the call. You know, and it had nothing to do with MMA. He didn't, you know, he ended up going, you know, MMA ended up being something where his talent suited, and he, you know, he had certain attributes that allowed him to have a lot of success in MMA, and he would continue to have success except for, you know, if you have a guy who can stop his takedown, or in the case of Velasquez, get right up every time he takes you down, and you have to do a stand-up fight, he's weak. He's not a strong stand-up fighter, and he's got to shore that up against the modern, you know, against the Cain Velasquez. Right. You know, I mean, a guy with a gas tank who's a great wrestler, who's a much better stand-up fighter. So, I mean, that's the thing he's going to have to shore up to be back in that, you know, position where he can make multi-million-dollar payoffs and headline the biggest pay-per-views like he did this last year.
So these two guys are really bullheaded. I mean, they don't budge for anybody. Dana White on the UFC side, and, you know, Brock does basically what he wants. So his ideal plan, as you said earlier, would be to fight MMA a couple of times and also make that money for a one-time appearance with WrestleMania. Well, I mean, what would you put the percentage at? Is UFC going to move? Is Brock going to have to bail? And how much longer can Brock push for this, you know, without delaying his MMA career too much?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I would think that unless he's got something that will, you know, I mean, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for him to do Mania. You know, the thing is he's got, you know, Vince McMahon, who thinks he can do anything. I mean, Vince thought he could get his wife into the Senate, and, you know, he failed on that one. But, I mean, Vince has still done a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, Vince got Floyd Mayweather. You know, Vince got Trump, you know, Donald Trump. And he's got a lot of people to do Ali. I mean, he's gotten a lot of big stars, bigger than Brock Lesnar. So I think that, you know, he thinks somehow, you know, he'll, you know, whether he or Brock or someone can make the deal and convince Dana. But I don't see it being in Dana's best interest. The only thing, and again, and I want to make this very clear, okay, I know that this is something that has been talked about with friends of Lesnar, but he's not brought this up to UFC as best I can tell, nor do I expect him to, nor do I know that UFC has done it. But I think that if there's a give and give situation here, what makes sense, in a sense, would be for Lesnar to do Ultimate Fighter, to film that this year,
yep,
and then go with Mir or whoever, and build up a fight off of Ultimate Fighter, which would do giant business, and would do a season of Brock Lesnar and Mir as coaches of Ultimate Fighter. I think would do excellent. And as a you know, kind of like as a package, as part of the deal, he's allowed to do WrestleMania. I mean, that way, I mean, it's perfect for him because Ultimate Fighter would be airing when his book comes out in April, and that's another thing. He's got the book coming out in April. WrestleMania is 2 weeks before his book comes out, so he would be able to get back those wrestling fans that, you know, he hasn't been really around in 6 years, and remember him, and now he's got his autobiography coming out, and be on Spike every week on a show that a lot of people are watching while the book is coming out, while he's running around touring and promoting the book. And, I mean, but the point is if he's going to run around and tour and promote the book in April, I mean, we're talking about probably, you know, not fighting until, you know, what, July?
Yep.
You know, he'd want a 2-month camp. So you're talking about a lot of commitments here. So, but again, you know, that's just something where, you know, people have talked about maybe you could do that, and maybe that's the branch that you could give Dana, or Dana would say, okay, you're doing this favor for me because, you know, Lesnar really doesn't want to go to Vegas for 7 weeks, and I don't think he really wants to coach Ultimate Fighter. And again, I don't even know that Lesnar would agree to do that, but I'm guessing if he's looking at making a lot of money in the book and everything, if there's a trade-off of going to Vegas for 7 weeks and then getting that WrestleMania payoff, it's probably very much worth it to him to do that.
But that said, as far as you know, have they been speaking with each other at all? Because I think the timing is interesting that, the Tough 13 thing was supposed to be decided a while ago. It seems like they're dragging their feet on it as if they're working on something and waiting on something.
Yeah, well, I mean, the interesting thing is Mir was supposed to fight Brendan Schaub, and now Mir's out of the picture with Brendan Schaub, so why was Mir pulled, unless there's a secret injury to Mir that we don't know about. That could be something that they're talking. As far as I know, which was as of, I don't know, maybe a week ago, Lesnar and Dana, as far as I know, hadn't talked. I mean, that's what Dana was saying, that he had yet to talk to him, and Lesnar's people were kind of telling me the same thing, that, he hasn't made any decisions, he hasn't made any calls, everything's in a holding pattern with him. So that's kind of where everything was the last I've heard.
And again, we want to establish, and I'm surprised, Dave, that you don't get more angry when people misquote you off of that radio show.
Oh, I was mad about this one. I was mad about this one because, I'm reading everywhere where I'm going like, Lesnar's ready to quit UFC for WWE, and that's probably the last thing that's going to happen because, from a Lesnar standpoint, he makes a lot more money in UFC than he makes in WWE. He'll make more money for a UFC main event than he would make for a year in WWE, or close to the same. But the point is, and the training's really hard, but he'll train hard. That's not an issue with him. He likes to train, but he hates to travel, and he certainly doesn't want to be in a different city every night like wrestling. So the idea that he would right now, quit UFC to go to WWE is preposterous. Now, like I said, do a one-time WWE WrestleMania for a giant payoff? Absolutely. If I was him, I would do it in a heartbeat. And if I was Dana White, I would not want him to do it for all the reasons Dana White doesn't want him to do it. And that's kind of where it stands.